Locally in Los Angeles, an area particularly hit hard by the burst of the housing bubble, new statistics show that the January rate of decline of home prices was actually lower than in the previous month, prompting speculation that the housing market might already be bottoming out here. But regardless of that, LA Voice, which is an organization fighting for affordable housing for the last 2 years, is advocating for a so-called mixed housing ordinance as a local solution to the national housing crisis. 14,000 new units were constructed in Los Angeles in 2006, right before the housing bubble burst. But 90% of those new units are affordable only to those home buyers with an annual income of $135,000 or more. Joining me in studio this morning is Executive Director of LA Voice, Jared Rivera. Welcome to Uprising, Jared.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. So 14,000 new units in Los Angeles in 2006. They were actually categorized as being affordable housing?
No, those were not affordable. I think that the story of Los Angeles, first of all, is a story of renters. 2/3 of Angelenos rent the homes that they live in. And so what we have seen over the last couple of years is before there was a recognition that there was a housing crisis nationally, groups on the ground knew that there was a housing crisis here in Los Angeles. And so the story of 2006 paints that picture. There were 14,000 new units built all over the city. That's all of the new units of housing. Of those, 90% were affordable only to families who make more than $135,000 a year.
So they were affordable, but for a certain income bracket.
I think it's tough to say that they're affordable. I think that that's the problem, right? At the same time, since 2002, in the city of Los Angeles, we have destroyed 13,000 rent-stabilized units, and we've replaced them with luxury apartments or converted them into condominiums. So we build housing in the city of LA. The problem is we only build one type of housing. And so if you are a renter in the city and you're going out to any new building that's up, you know what that means. That means $1,800 rents for studio apartments, $2,200 rents for one bedrooms, and so on and so forth.
Now, Mayor Villaraigosa has often talked about trying to do something about the housing crisis in Los Angeles. Did this happen? Did this conversion of affordable housing to essentially non-affordable housing happen under his watch, and what role did he play?
Well, the mayor has put out a 5-year plan. The mayor has put money into the housing trust fund at decent levels over the last couple of years. Currently, one of the key points of the mayor's plan is something that we have been advocating and supporting for the last couple of years, which is a mixed-income housing ordinance as a way really of resetting the rules. Now that we're in a time of a lull of housing development, we think it's the perfect time to change the way that we build so that in the future we're building housing that's affordable to working families in the city.
And as I mentioned, the housing crisis has hit LA in particular very, very hard. What do you make of these attempts by speculators, as I mentioned, to be excited about the fact that the decline in housing prices was not as high here as it was around the country? The rate of decline may be slowing down, and that the crisis may be bottoming out. It sounds to me as though the excitement over reinflating the housing bubble is a little misplaced.
Yeah, we're in a tough spot. The fact that home prices have fallen so much means that there are tens of thousands of families who owe more on their home than it's worth. That means that people are facing mortgage foreclosure, so they're re-entering the rental market, which is already extremely difficult as it was. For first-time home buyers, I mean, there may be a time in the future as the economy improves that this will be a good time to get in. But from our perspective, if we don't act now to really reset the rules, then we're going to recreate the past. We're going to have another housing bubble. It's going to become increasingly difficult for renters and for homeowners to exist in the city.
Jared, let's talk about the so-called mixed housing ordinance. What is this type of ordinance that you would like to see, and how could it solve this crisis?
I think that the effort behind the mixed income housing ordinance is a great example of what can happen when folks come together in our city. Housing LA, which LA Voice is a member, is the housing coalition in the city that's brought together organized labor, religious organizations, folks like the United Way, tenant groups, to pass the Mixed-Income Housing Ordinance. What this would do is it would be a new law that would require a certain percentage between, say, 20 and 25% of all new development in the city to have reduced rents so that they're affordable to different income levels and for working families. It's not new. There are 170 cities and counties in California that today have this law. There's a lot of evidence to show that it works. It does not disrupt the housing market. The only difference is that we have never had the political will to enact this law here in Los Angeles.
But without the political will, at a time when unemployment is sky high and people need homes, it seems as though not having such an ordinance just simply leaves thousands of units empty, which doesn't really benefit anybody.
Yeah, I think, if we've learned anything from the crisis we're in, is we have to rethink and we have to replan our future. And so I think that the conversation we're having around this ordinance in LA really reflects the conversation that we're having nationally. It's a conversation about, does the market alone create housing that's affordable for all income levels? And clearly that's not the case, although that's the argument that's put out by developers and developer associations in the city of Los Angeles. So right now, the City Council of LA is considering this proposal. We're entering a crucial moment in this. We need to get folks engaged, talking to their city council members, because we have a great opportunity to enact this this year.
So what specifically, if this ordinance were to pass, what specifically would it require the city council to do to the real estate developers and force them to do, and then those who own these luxury housing units?
What it would mean is that as new buildings go up, there is a guarantee that a certain percentage of them are made affordable. So it would require developers to include affordable units in every new building that went up. That's across the city.
But that's only new buildings. It doesn't talk about those existing 14,000 units.
This is correct. This would be for the future. Although, we've looked at a lot of other programs that have been enacted. Many of them are enacted in these moments when housing is in a lull because it's not affecting projects that are in the pipeline. And so if we enact it now, we think about 10 years from now, we will make sure that as new units are built, and they will be built again in the city, but the question is, who are they going to be built for? This would assure that they're built for working families as well.
And in terms of making them affordable, what's the formula that would be used? Because, of course, housing prices as a whole will waver, will rise and fall. Inflation, of course, changes. So is there a particular formula?
There is. The specifics are being worked out in the policy language right now. Basically, the affordable formula that we're using is 30%, so that a family would not spend more than 30% of their income on housing. And so the rents would be adjusted based on the household income of a family.
So it's not going to be based on any sort of local across-the-board standard or even a percentage of what the highest housing units are. It's literally going to be based on some household income, and that's a pretty progressive approach.
I think that this is a great opportunity. I think that we have a lot of programs to look at across the state to see that this has worked. This has worked. It can work.
Where else has it worked?
It's worked in San Francisco. It's in West Hollywood. It's in Santa Monica. It's in Pasadena. It's in 170 cities and counties across the state. It's not in the biggest city in the state, though.
Now, when you say it's worked, what does that mean exactly? I mean, if you're talking to a developer, if you're talking to a member of the city council, how do you convince them that it's worked?
You can look at the statistics. So you can look at the number of units that were built before these ordinances were enacted and the number of units that have been built afterwards. And so there have been significant percentages of all the new affordable units that are built in these cities are built only because of this program, because it's a mandatory requirement. Now, that's not something that every developer likes to hear, obviously, but I think what we have to continue to challenge is the fact that the free market alone has not been able to produce the housing that we need.
My guest is Jared Rivera, Executive Director of LA Voice, which is a local organization that is calling for a mixed-income housing ordinance as a local solution to the national housing crisis. The ordinance is currently being considered by the LA City Council. First, Jared, tell us exactly what the timeline is and what you recommend listeners do if they should be getting in touch with their city council members. And then also tell us about LA Voice.
Sure. Well, first of all, on the timeline, we believe we're making a big push for this to happen by the end of June. There were recent council elections. There are going to be folks that are coming off of city council, coming onto city council, and we think that now is the moment that this has to happen. The actual ordinance is currently being drafted by council, and it's in that stage. We've set up a hotline that we would ask people to call if you want to support this. It's 1-888-531-1335. That's 1-888-531-1335. If you call that, you can be directed to the head of the Housing Committee. It's Councilmember Herb Wesson. He needs to hear from you. We've set this up, and we had about 1,000 calls go in 10 days, showing that the support that people have about that, but they need to continue to hear from residents. So
what role does Herb Wesson play? Is he supportive of this project, and he's basically worked with you to set up this hotline?
Absolutely. We've been in negotiations with both the mayor's office and also the office of Councilmember Wesson for the last year. The Councilmember Wesson is the one who has to shepherd this process as the head of the Housing Committee. Really, we're close, but it's a question of, is it going to happen and when is it going to happen? And it's only going to happen if the council is hearing from residents all across the city supporting this.
And tell us about LA Voice. This is a local organization. Who is it comprised of? Can listeners join if they want?
Absolutely. LA Voice is a faith-based community organization. So we're a coalition of 25 religious congregations, interfaith, bringing together churches, mosques, and synagogues to really train folks in the art of community organizing to get involved in local issues. We're part of a national faith-based organizing network known as PICO, which is in 17 states and 150 cities across the country. Basically, LA Voice is about putting faith into action. It's about how do you translate a justice that is called by all major religions and translating that into the needs of our city here and now. We'd love to hear from folks. We have a website, www.lavoicepico.org. We need folks to get involved. Now is the time to act.
And finally, Jared, in terms of this particular issue itself on affordable housing, are you optimistic? I mean, there's a lot of talk about how, in this whole country is facing a crisis, and that the people at the top, their only solutions involve continuing the system as it is, and that this is an opportunity for grassroots movements like the one you're involved in to take an opportunity, to take this moment as an opportunity to make long-term change. Are you optimistic that this is going to happen, not just on affordable housing in LA, but across the board?
I am optimistic. I think looking at the election of Barack Obama and having young people and communities of color come together in a way that has never happened before, that can only make us optimistic. I think also we are seeing the results of bad policy over the last 20 years in our country. But really, we're only going to change this country is if people get involved in their local neighborhoods, in their local city, and building strong organizations to put out a bold vision of change.
Jared, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Jared Rivera is the executive director of LA Voice, online at lavoicepico.org. That hotline again, if you want to get in touch with Herb Wesson about the Mixed-Income Housing Ordinance, is 1-888-531-1335. 1-888-531-1335. And if you missed that, you can check lavoicepico.org and also go to our website later today at kpfk.org/uprising, where we'll put up the link as well as the phone number.